The first thing the students noticed was her silence. Not the awkward kind, not the nervous kind, but the kind that made noise feel unnecessary. Miss Nyla Carter stood at the front of room 214 with her hands calmly folded, shoulders squared, chin lifted just enough to show pride without arrogance. She was 32, tall, with deep brown skin that carried the quiet glow of someone who had survived storms and learned to stand afterward. Her black hair was pulled into a neat low bun, no loose strands, no distractions, a crisp white shirt tucked into a charcoal pencil skirt, sleeves rolled just below her elbows. Professional, composed, untouchable, or so it seemed. Whispers slithered through the classroom like snakes. New teacher, black woman, too calm, too confident, too different. At the back row, Kyle Mercer leaned sideways in his chair, smirking. 17. Broad shoulders, football jacket hanging off his seat like a warning sign. Beside him sat Tyler Boone and Jake Holloway, his loyal shadows, laughing before any joke was even told. They had already decided what she was to them, another target, another adult who would flinch if pushed hard enough. Miss Carter wrote her name on the board in clean, deliberate strokes. Nyla Carter, English Literature. The chalk tapped once when she finished, sharp and final. She turned, meeting the room with steady eyes. "Good morning," she said, voice smooth, low, controlled. "I'll be your teacher for the rest of the year. No smile, no apology for existing." Kyle scoffed under his breath. "She thinks she's scary." Jake snorted. Tyler leaned forward. "Give it a week." Miss Carter began the lesson without acknowledging the murmurs. Shakespeare, power, language as a weapon. Irony danced in the air unnoticed. As she spoke, a few students actually listened. Aaliyah Brooks near the window clutched her notebook tighter, eyes wide. She had seen this before. Teachers who didn't bend, teachers who didn't beg. They always paid for it. The first disruption came 15 minutes in. Kyle let his chair fall backward, the crash echoing. Laughter erupted. Miss Carter paused, eyes flicking toward him. Calm, unblinking. "Is there a problem, Mr. Mercer?" Kyle stood slowly, exaggerated stretch. "Nah, just didn't realize we were in prison. You talk like we're criminals." A few laughs. Miss Carter nodded once. "Sit down. We're discussing Macbeth, not your insecurities." The room froze, a sharp intake of breath. Kyle's smile twitched, then hardened. He sat, but something dark settled behind his eyes. A challenge accepted. The bullying didn't explode. It crept. Notes passed with crude drawings, whispered slurs when her back turned. Someone moved her chalk. Someone loosened the cap on her marker so ink leaked onto her fingers. She noticed everything. She reacted to nothing. Each day, her silence carved deeper into their nerves. By week 3, Kyle wanted blood. It happened on a Thursday, rain pounding the windows, tension thick. Miss Carter was writing on the board when Kyle flicked a paper ball that hit her shoulder. She didn't turn. Jake laughed louder than necessary. Tyler muttered something ugly under his breath. Miss Carter finished her sentence, capped the marker, and faced them. "This classroom is not a playground," she said evenly, "and I am not your enemy. Sit down." Kyle stood instead. "Or what?" His voice was loud now. Proud. "You gonna call the principal? Cry racism? That your move?" The room went dead silent. Miss Carter's jaw tightened for a split second, then smooth again. "Sit down." Kyle stepped forward, too close, the smell of arrogance and sweat. "You don't talk to me like that." Something snapped in the air. Tyler stood too. Jake followed. 3 boys, 1 woman. The math was ugly. "Back to your seats," Miss Carter said. Still calm, still controlled. Kyle laughed and reached out. His fingers hooked the fabric of her shirt. The rip was loud, violent, a tearing sound that sliced the room in half. Gasps erupted. Aaliyah covered her mouth. Someone screamed. The white shirt tore open at the shoulder, buttons popping, fabric hanging loose, exposing skin meant to be protected by professionalism and respect. Kyle froze, shocked by his own action. Miss Carter looked down at the torn fabric. Then she looked back up. Her eyes were no longer calm, they were focused, deadly still. The room held its breath. Kyle smirked nervously. Oops! Miss Carter exhaled once, slowly, deep, like someone who had been waiting for permission. She reached up, adjusted the torn shirt, not to hide herself, but to free her movement. Her posture shifted, subtle, feet grounding, center lowering, balance perfect. Everyone, she said quietly, stay seated. Kyle scoffed. What you gonna? He never finished the sentence. In one fluid motion, Miss Carter stepped inside his space, gripping his wrist, rotating it with surgical precision. Her hip turned, her shoulder dipped. Years of discipline exploded into action. A judo throw, clean, controlled, devastating. Kyle's feet left the ground, time slowed, then his body slammed onto the classroom floor with a thunderous crash. Gasps turned into screams, chairs scraped. Tyler stumbled back, Jake froze in horror. Kyle groaned, the air knocked clean out of him, staring up at the ceiling like he had just been erased. Miss Carter stood over him, breathing steady. Silence swallowed the room. She adjusted her skirt, straightened her torn shirt, looked at Tyler and Jake with eyes that promised consequences. Sit, she said. They did, immediately. The bell rang seconds later. No one moved. Miss Carter turned toward the door just as the principal appeared, drawn by the noise. He looked from the torn shirt to Kyle on the floor to the terrified class. Miss Carter, what happened here? She met his eyes without fear. Assault, she said calmly, and self-defense. Kyle groaned again. The principal swallowed, and just like that, the power shifted. If you felt that moment, if you felt the silence, the shock, the justice beginning to rise, make sure you subscribe to this channel. Stories like this don't just entertain, they remind us that strength doesn't always shout. Sometimes it waits.